This course is divided into 3 modules. Module 1 provides an overview of quality, including Six Sigma, Lean, and statistical process control. And this includes 4 chapters, which give you both the big picture and enough detail so that you fully understand quality management. Then Module 2 prepares you for the White Belt Certification exam via the textbook from the CSSC, the Council for Six Sigma Certification. And this White Belt comprises 3 chapters. You then take that certification exam with the CSSC, which has historically been free. And then Module 3 prepares you for the next highest certification exam, the Yellow Belt, again, via the textbook from the CSSC. And this Yellow Belt comprises 8 chapters. You then take that certification exam. Historically, that's been around $100 paid directly to the CSSC. Now, that all sounds like a lot, but the material is quite reasonable and should make a lot of sense to you. And my students pass the exams. With that, let's dig into our first module, Quality Concepts, with the first chapter, Quality Foundations. In this chapter, we'll overview the ideas of customer value and quality, including the voice of the customer, the VOC, and the moment of truth. We'll also relate how the key to improving quality is improving the underlying processes. And then we'll introduce quality programs like Total Quality Management, TQM, Six Sigma, and Lean. And finally, we'll contrast how quality may differ for goods, i.e. products, versus services, including related ideas with servitization and the service dominant logic. You can find the updated learning objectives in D2L. These learning objectives tell you what you need to know for the quizzes. Every quiz question is attached to a learning objective. Let's now jump into the key ideas of value and quality, including the voice of the customer and the moment of truth. Our initial definition of quality is consistently meeting customer value expectations. And a key word in that is value. And we all generally know what value means, but how would you specifically define it? Maybe you would say something that we want or that we like. And from a business perspective, we could categorize it as something someone is willing to pay for. The customer wants it enough that they're willing to pay for it. And that's an incredibly simple idea. Nonetheless, it's extremely complex for an organization to figure out. What are customers specifically willing to pay for? And these come to us in the form of the characteristics that we saw earlier: high performing, durable, innovative, etc. And there are more than these. In other words, if an organization can offer one or a few of these characteristics better than their competition, then customers will purchase from them. And again, consumers will have individual, i.e. different opinions, not only about which of these characteristics are important, but also how different organizations compare across their preferred characteristics. For instance, again, people who prefer Publix may do so because of the convenience. They have a lot of stores and customization, their broad selection. Likewise, there are a lot of helpful Publix employees waiting to help with deli meat, seafood, subs, etc. But boy, Publix is quite expensive though. And in contrast, Aldi people like myself appreciate their low cost and speed due to the lack of selection. Still, I pass by 2 Kroger stores and 1 Publix to get to Aldi. And there's no deli, no seafood, no sub counters at Aldi. And I'm good with that. You may not be, and that's fine for each of us. Value is both complex and individual. And then as a further challenge, value is dynamic, meaning that it changes over time. A characteristic that is important to you now may not be so later, whether it's tomorrow, next week, or next year. And we may also sour on a particular provider. For instance, I used to like to go to Kroger, and it was somewhat less expensive than Publix, but then I got used to Aldi, and I now struggle with Kroger. Summarizing, value is simple on the surface, yet complex to deliver. Consider pausing this recording to think about what value characteristics your organization can deliver better than its competitors. And you should really be able to convince yourself as well as others. And if you can't, then maybe your organization is not as competitive as it could be. My employer, for instance, Kennesaw State, has advantages with low cost, particularly compared to private universities, and convenience with our location in the northwest suburbs of Atlanta, and performance. Our business school is highly rated. Consider also pausing this link to think about the value characteristics that you personally offer your customers. Who do you serve? These could be customers of the organization, i.e. external customers, or more likely, they're internal to your organization, i.e. other employees. And some of you may actually serve both internal and external customers. In my job as a professor, I'm fortunate to serve KSU's customers, i.e. the students. And I like to think that my value advantages include, one, performance. I somewhat think that I'm a bit better at many of my operations and supply chain colleagues. And I offer customization. When asked, I give personal help to any student. Let's extend this value concept with Michael Porter's idea of the value chain. His point here is that organizations create products and services with value, but this doesn't happen all at once. Instead, different departments, employees, and activities add different pieces of value that accumulate into the finished products and services. In other words, those finished products and services contain value from many different parts of the organization, including different employees. This recording, for instance, includes a significant amount of work from me, technology support from KSU and Microsoft, and deep content support from a variety of sources, including my own experiences, textbooks, academic publications, and even industry podcasts. So this value builds and builds within the organization, ultimately accumulating in high-value products and services that customers want. And that leads to customer satisfaction. Quality focuses on consistently delivering value to customers, driving their satisfaction. Satisfied customers not only come back, but they also help us get other customers via reviews and word of mouth. Again, our informal definition of quality is consistently meeting customer value expectations. And the idea of consistency means that the customer gets the same positive outcome each time. The opposite of consistency is variability. The statistical measure of variability is the Greek letter sigma, which is the standard deviation. And as we'll learn, that's the origin of the sigma part of Six Sigma. Six Sigma evaluates the level of variability, i.e. inconsistency in a process. If that level of variability is minimal, then the process will rarely produce defects. So a Six Sigma process is virtually defect-free. That's it. It's a simple idea that we'll learn more about later in the course. But let's provide a more formal definition of quality to prepare you for the certification exam. And this definition comes from the International Organization for Standardization, ISO, which offers quality certifications for organizations like ISO 9000. Their definition of quality is the degree to which a set of inherent characteristics fulfills requirements. Again, our formal definition of quality for the certification exam is the degree to which a set of inherent characteristics fulfills requirements. But when you think about it, it virtually means the same as our informal definition, consistently meeting customer expectations. Requirements are basically the same as expectations. Regardless of these two specific definitions, quality always focuses on the voice of the customer, the VOC. This is a key tenet of quality. What does the customer want? Quality starts with a systematic process of gathering and analyzing customer needs, including pain points. The challenge is that customers often struggle to clarify their voice, their expectations. They might say that they want low cost or fast delivery, but they can't always specify what these should be exactly. And then when you do get it right, the customer doesn't usually even tell you. They tend to keep their satisfaction to themselves. We also said that customer value is dynamic, meaning that it changes over time. When an organization does deliver exceptional value, customers just tend to raise the bar. For instance, 2-day delivery from Amazon was originally an unheard of level of quality. Now it's the benchmark. In my opinion, the best organizations like Amazon anticipate future customer needs, offering them before the customer even knows that they really want them. Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, highlights both of these ideas well. When you do something right and please the customer, they don't send you a card. They don't even tell you. And he also emphasized the baseline just keeps getting higher and higher. When customers point out a problem and you fix it, they then point out another problem. Anticipate their next problems and concerns. And that was Steve Jobs' approach. He designed the original Apple products for how they ought to be, and not necessarily what customers knew that they wanted at that time. You may or you may not be an Apple fan. Still, you have to appreciate how they launched products that became benchmarks, including the iPod, iPhone, iPad, and MacBook. They knew what customers would want before we did. With customer expectations at the forefront of quality, we emphasize two terms. Number one is critical to customer, CTC. What does the customer want? The voice of the customer. And then number two is critical to quality, CTQ. What must we, the organization, specifically do with the products and services to achieve those customer wants? These sound very familiar, and they are closely related. However, critical to customer are external expectations that, as we just said, are often abstract and broad. For instance, we, the consumer, want our online orders to be delivered fast. Critical to quality helps us internalize that expectation into specific metrics. For delivery, for instance, we commit to 2-day delivery. We translated the customer's need for fast specifically to 2-day delivery. Summarizing, the organization has to translate the external, vague, critical to customer expectations to specific, critical to quality metrics to ensure that we can consistently deliver on the voice of the customer. That is, we have to operationalize the voice of the customer, creating processes that consistently deliver on customer expectations. Let's take a brief step back and define a few terms relative to customer expectations. The first one is a defect, which sounds obvious, but let's define it as a product or service that does not meet customer expectations. So you may have to rework it, meaning that you fix it. You apply additional resources, such as labor, materials, equipment, to correct the defects. Or if the defects can't be corrected, you may have to scrap it. So it can't be repaired, you throw it out for a total loss. Let's dive deeper into the voice of the customer with the moment of truth. The moment of truth. That's when the customer assesses whether their needs have been met. That's the culmination of quality. In that moment of truth, the customer decides if their expectations have been met. And this is another simple yet incredibly complex idea. Specifically, the moment of truth doesn't happen just once. It happens over and over again as the customer uses a product or service. For instance, as you engage in this recording, there are moments of truth happening over and over again. Some of you might be thinking, hey, this is really interesting. It makes a lot of sense, and I'm looking at my organization and my job in a new light. Positive moments of truth. On the opposite end, a negative moment of truth might make some of you say, well, this is pretty basic and slow. Moments of truth happen all the time for organizations and your job. Again, Steve Jobs says that they don't send you a card, though. In other words, how do you know if you've had a successful moment of truth? And some organizations do seek to understand their moments of truth with the Net Promoter Score, NPS, that we often see in emails and pop-up bubbles. How likely are you to recommend us on a scale of 0 to 10? While they usually follow up with more questions to elicit important details, that score alone is a highly valid and reliable indicator of the moment of truth. Again, consider pausing this to think more critically about the moments of truth with your job. When do they occur? How do you really know if you've delivered a positive or negative moment of truth? Again, your customers may be external or internal to your organization. Regardless, every job has customers. You have customers. Some of you may not have thought about your job in that way, but it's important to understand your customers as well as evaluate if you're consistently meeting their needs. Let's take a step back to re-emphasize the importance of the voice of the customer with Ford. Henry Ford founded the company in 1903. At that time, most people just walked, used a horse, or rode a train. Automobiles were rare and limited to the wealthiest people. He wanted the common person to be able to afford a car. And he popularized the car virtually single-handedly, drastically and permanently changing society. Ford was incredibly focused on the voice of the customer to the point of obsession. He maintained everything stems from the customer. Our products serve the people. Notice that word, serve. Our products serve the people. And he warns that when the people wake up to the fact that they're not being served, the end of that producer is in sight. Let's look at other examples. Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart, brought the U.S. into the era of big box stores. Walmart, Target, Costco, Home Depot. Many of us don't necessarily consider Walmart to be of high quality, but a lot of us still shop there. They're the largest retailer in the world, so they must be doing something right. Sam Walton attributed the Walmart concept to being obsessed with pleasing customers. He wanted to be so good that the competition had to adapt to Walmart. You don't adapt to them. He also highly valued frontline workers, the workers that served the customer directly. He said that employees either serve the customer or help other people serve the customer. Think about that. Every employee in the organization serves the end customer either directly or indirectly. Each needs to recognize their impact on end customer value. As another example, Amancio Ortega, the founder of Inditex, Zara stores, came from an extremely poor family in Spain. He actually quit school in his early teenage years to provide for his family. He apprenticed in the clothing industry, but eventually realized that the industry ignored most of its customers. It catered primarily to wealthy people. While most of us don't necessarily know Inditex and Zara that well here in the US, Ortega has built a global retail empire with sales exceeding 40 billion, with more than 160,000 employees and 5,000 plus stores. His approach focused on the voice of the customer, work backwards from the customer. Next, Ferrero makes delicious Nutella and other candies. Michele Ferrero, the founder, highlighted the customer as the CEO of the organization. And he even had a name for that customer, Mrs. Valeria, and a detailed description of who she was and how she decided to spend the family's hard-earned money. He said that you must understand your customers completely. They decide your success or demise. You must never disrespect or betray them. And did it work? Well, Ferrero sales exceed 20 billion worldwide. James Dyson, the vacuum cleaner guy, made 5,127 prototypes for his first vacuum. He's since sold more than 20 million of them. He urges organizations to not lose the direct connection with customers, be constantly understanding what works and what doesn't work. To do so, he always wanted to cut out middlemen. That is, don't let anyone get in between you and your customer. You won't be able to hear their voice. And finally, TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. They're the world's largest and dedicated chip manufacturer with annual sales of 90 billion. They make most of the chips for AI and for cell phones, customers like Apple, Nvidia, and others. They seek to empower their customers like Apple, who can then empower their customers like us. I love that idea. Focus on empowering your customers.